Alright, everyone. Well, it's Vivisector, Beast Within, the review. I do apologise for the length of time it's taken me to actually go and do the review for this. I've been a little bit busy. But anyway, so Vivisector, if I'm going to give a little general overview from it, first-person shooter. You go onto an island as part of a military unit, you find a lot of weird shit, you shoot most of it, and then some plot happens somewhere over there, and I look at it with general disdain and despair until it goes away. But overall, a good game. Not necessarily a cutting-edge or groundbreaking game, but a game that, despite everything it had and the limitations it had to deal with, it did a lot, and it actually delivered a lot of content that I wasn't expecting. So, from that, as a non-spoiler review, I would say that this is a game you would probably want to have a look at, because, I think it's either dead cheap or, I had to kind of download it from a separate site purely because I couldn't find it anywhere. But if you could possibly find this and find some way to support the developers or the publishers, I think the developers are now actually still... some of them, at the very least, are porting one of their old franchises onto the iOS and PSP. It's called Carnivores, and it's basically about hunting dinosaurs on an alien planet. So, that sounds like your kind of thing. Go for it. Did actually get some fairly good reviews. Or you could always get Cryostasis Sleep of Reason, which I would highly recommend if you do like your first-person shooters with a bit of weirdness to them. But anyway, I am digressing. So that's kind of the spoiler-free. That's a thumbs up. It's something you may have to persevere with for the first hour, but otherwise you will almost certainly start to enjoy it and start to at least feel challenged by it, but not in a bullshit, oh, for the love of God kind of way. So, moving on. So I went into the game with a few expectations. Obviously, I'd seen Cryostasis Sleep of Reason. One of the first LPs I actually watched was by Halloween 4545, him playing Cryostasis, and I immensely enjoyed it. First of all, from the story point, because it uses some really interesting mechanics in terms of time travel and changing the past and stuff like that. But secondarily, because it had amazing atmosphere. It was set on a ice-locked ship. People were being strangely fused with ice and at the same time with machinery, and it worked. It was doing dark and grim and creepy before that became like the stock in trade for a lot of rather shit horror games that came later. So yeah, I pretty much came into it willing to overlook the quality, if that makes sense, of the game, just to kind of see what it was going to do. Because I felt like the developers would, if they'd already made a game that good, they'd probably be able to put something together before that. And obviously, the Carnivores franchise did get some good reviews as well. They've been batting like a decent 7.5 in every review I think they got. Even the ones they got which weren't necessarily great, people were still praising the way they put the game together. So that seems to be a good pedigree as far as I'm concerned for the cheaper layer of games. You may not find all the polish you'd get with a AAA game, but you may still find the same level of actual effort and detail put into it. So, for whatever you want. So, going into it, gameplay-wise, because that's kind of the nuts and bolts of a first-person shooter. If the gameplay holds up, it's the axiom of you have one action to do, make that one action entertaining enough to stretch it out over 4 or 5 hours, however long the game's going to be. In terms of actual combat, I felt like it had areas that were really good and areas that it really lacked. The lacking areas were not necessarily deal breakers, but I felt they could have been improved or condensed or just generally refined to be more effective and give you less options but more viable options. Because, well, let's start off with the weapons, because I think the weapons were the thing where I noticed the biggest room for improvement over alteration or anything like that. Now, the game gave you a really great repertoire of weapons. You had pistols, sniper rifles, shotguns, assault rifles, heavy assault rifles, rocket launchers, energy weapons, grenades, and a knife that you just sort of poked things with when you were bored. As far as I was concerned, that's what it's for. She was like, bloop, 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 splitch, splitch. What? You're saying something? Splish, splish, splish. And later on in the game, as you progress, you start getting upgrades for some of those guns. Really nice idea. My only beef with that was some of the upgrades were redundant and some of the upgrades never actually made a difference. Some of the guns that didn't really make a difference were things like the PPSH, which was the upgrade for the 9mm pistol, the high-powered sniper rifle, which I think it said it was armor piercing. That thing did not pierce fucking armor worth a damn, I tell you that much, because you still had to chip bits off enemies in order to actually kill them. And the howitzer as well, which I thought was a crashing shame because I really like the idea of a shoulder-mounted fucking piece of artillery. But some of the upgrades just didn't confer the right kind of upgrade. So talking about the PPSH, which was basically the SMG equivalent of the 9mm pistol, it still had the same damage output, which would have been fine if the damage per second had been a bit higher. If it had been able to put out more actual ammo all at once, that would have made it a viable close quarters clinch weapon if I needed to use it. But for the most part, it was and I'd dump 100 fucking bullets into an enemy before they drop because it was so inaccurate and also so slow. I'd be burning off health as I did so. Weapons like the Gauss rifle kind of did it correctly because it gave you tight control bursts, and like I said, it reminded me a huge amount of the pulse rifle from the Aliens franchise, and it gave you a scope, and I thought that was a really nice way of condensing what was otherwise a very good weapon into a really, really effective weapon. And then you compare it to things like the armor-piercing sniper rifle, where it still suffered from the same problems as the original sniper rifle, it just had a bit more punch to it. And the problem with the sniper rifle was it didn't have any kick. It didn't have any bite behind it. And I think that was an issue with quite a lot of the guns, apart from maybe the double-barreled shotgun and the Gauss rifle and the plasma cannon. In fact, the energy weapons, the tester and the plasma cannon, I thought were fantastic. I just never really found an opportunity to use them too often. It was a nice factor, actually, they did put in, was that they dealt splash damage. So if you were too close, you could actually injure yourself. That's a really nice little trade-off they had there, because they were really effective anti-personnel weapons. So, I mean, I could shoot, and I think it was on those in late game where the rocket guys were there, I could shoot them 50 times with the rocket launcher and achieve nothing. Or I could shoot them twice with the plasma cannon and they just turned into giblets. And that was kind of a great demonstration of why one gun was fantastic and why one gun just was not worth being there as far as I was concerned. Because stuff like the howitzer, I could hit an enemy dead on with it, and all it would do was take the armour off. You'd still need to hit them again in order to actually kill them. And when the whole idea is for this gun to be an upgrade and it takes exactly the same amount of shots to kill someone, that's a problem, and that's kind of a waste of my materials. What I thought about later on was, if you've ever played Unreal Tournament, you can charge up your rocket launcher with several rockets, then fire them all off in a spread. That would have been fantastic for this game, especially when you're fighting lots of enemies or big enemies that you want to hit a lot of times. Being able to just supercharge a weapon would be really nice. But they gave you a lot of variety, and a lot of the weapons were effective. It just would have been nice if maybe they tightened them up, maybe they made them a bit beefier, or cut down on some of the upgrades and just made the pre-existing weapon a bit better. But anyway, so guns are on one side, obviously enemies are on the other. And in terms of enemies, I have to say, I think the game did excellent work on not just making interesting enemies that were a challenge, but making a really wide variety of them, especially in the early game, where you're fighting just regularly enhanced but regular looking animals. So you've got teleporting hyenas, you've got tigers that breathe fire, you've got lions that fire rockets, you've got not teleporting, they were stealth jaguars, you had, what was the other one? Yeah, gorillas with grenade launchers as well. These were all animals that had extra elements to them, but they also had the armor plating on them, so you had to choose your shots carefully, and that was a really nice idea that they brought in early and stuck with throughout the entirety of the game, which was tactical fire. Rather than simply, you point, you shoot, it dies, it's you point, you aim, you save ammo that way, and you actually get an element of skill as well, because I did like being able to take out certain enemies with one well-placed shot if you could get it right. I think that was the only time I used the optic rifle for anything useful was the gorillas, because you could shoot them in one bit of the shoulder and they just went, oh! and fell over. So, alright, I think every gun did have a moment for it to shine, but overall, you could use most of the guns effectively against enemies. It was just your innate skill to actually overcome them. And I think that's always a really good way to actually make a player feel like they're actually getting better at a game, is not to simply give them good gear, but make them be better at handling enemies. So stuff like Dead Space was good for that. I think the later Resident Evil games have been good for that as well, where you're targeting weak points, dodging their attacks. I mean, it's the Dark Souls scale, or I don't know if you want to go earlier, God Hand scale of You don't necessarily get better at the game. You don't necessarily get better by getting better moves. You get better at the game by simply being more skilled. And yeah, it always gave you the opportunity to take out enemies with a weaker weapon if you needed to, purely because you knew where to shoot, how to most effectively make the most of what you had. So that was really nice. And later on as you get into the game, I felt they made the mistake by dropping the regular animals. I would have liked to have seen maybe a mix of the two. So you could have regular running, bipedal, the anthropomorphized super soldiers running alongside the regular packs of hyenas and tigers. Because we never actually got a fire enemy unit when we got to the super soldiers. We just had shotguns, we had assault rifles, and we had Tesla rifles. And we had the whirlybird flying fuckheads, who I will hate eternally for what the fuck they were. I think those were... What were they, like dragonflies? They were like flying reptiles? I don't know what the fuck they were. Weird metal abominations. But anyway, possibly they missed a trick there. But even just in regular encounters, I was having fun, especially when the game started going a little bit Serious Sam all of a sudden, when it threw us into that arena with the first boss, and I will talk about the bosses in just a second. And it was about flanking the enemies, it was about making it to the next the next group of health pickups. It felt really dynamic, it felt like you were really having to pay attention to the action and not just dump ammunition down range. And especially when you were getting the... In fact, yeah, that was something I really wasn't expecting, but was really pleasantly surprised by, was the skill point system, and the fact that you weren't just earning skill points as you progress through the game and you went, oh, congratulations, you've got an upgrade. This was, if you do speed kills or you do like really high-powered splurchy kills, you get experience points, and when you explore and find secret areas, you get experience points, and then you can spend those at the little checkpoint hubs to improve your skills. Really nice little addition, and actually pushes the player to perform well, to not just hang back and cheese the game which way they can. It rewards you for getting stuck in and blowing enemies away, and this is something I think was in Call of Juarez as well. When a game rewards you for being suicidally ballsy, I'm gonna love it. I'm just gonna love it on a fundamental level, because I like games that give you the option of high risk, high reward content. So that, fantastic, really like that. So I did just touch on the boss fights, and this is something where, again, I think the game did well, but possibly didn't do enough. So obviously we had the Roller Rhino, which was a fantastic idea of like the charging style enemy. Didn't go in for the run him into scenery, run around, shoot him, but it was just nice to flank him. It felt like a natural, actual fight between me and it, and not necessarily a kind of pre-scripted thing I had to trigger off in order to actually beat. So that was really nice. And then later on when we did the, whatever the weird alien fucking thing was, I'm not 100% sure what that was supposed to be. But when it actually divided into two and you had to hunt down the smaller part and kill that before you could then go back and kill the big thing, that was nice. And it was something that had to be adapted to on the fly. You couldn't just hang back from a distance and cheese it, because I went, haha, I can kill this easily. And then I'd wasted all my good ammo and it was about to go to its second stage and I went, ooh, shit. So yeah, that was really fantastic. And obviously near the end of the game when you fight Dogstone in his great big avatar mech suit, that was kind of an underwhelming one, really. Because I did actually check. I did look, and I think they do intentionally gimp your weapon loadout for that final fight, because I could only use the pistol, and I could swear if I was using a better gun, I could have finished that boss fight in about 3.5 seconds. And the reason they were trying to stop me doing that was purely so he could get all his dialogue out before I killed him. So that's fair. I suppose that's kind of something you kind of had to do, but you could have done more with him. You could have just put him in a big arena, really beefed up his health, maybe have me strip off panels of his armour and attack the servos so I can take out his rocket launcher, take out his flamethrower. Stuff like that. Just making... Because, I mean, you've got the system there of taking off bits of the enemy's armour, getting to their weak points and stuff like that. This was shoot 3 glowing points on his back. It felt rushed, and if I had to have one criticism about this game, I would feel... It feels rushed, especially because I was really expecting the Jaguar. They really hype up, right from when you first get introduced to it, the stealth Jaguar with the landmines, that this is some kind of next generation super soldier and we should not let her out, we can't handle her, we can't contain her. and then you just end up running away, and then it gets killed off screen. And I thought, I've got a feeling you were planning to have that as a boss fight, and you fucked it somehow. Or they just didn't have the time to bring it out, because I was honestly expecting a boss fight where this thing would stealth and it would plant mines around the room to deny you places to run, and then you'd have to fight it in like a tight little area without it tagging you. That would have been really cool. What we got was like one insta-kill section if you don't run out a door in time, and other than that, you just sort of ran away from it mostly, yeah. But, and other things as well. There were certain points where it felt like assets were being used that weren't really supposed to be for the game. I mean, I'm not talking about like the dinosaur in ice. I think that was just a hangover from carnivals. I'm pretty sure that was just what it was. But stuff like the medical staff when we started getting to the labs, those guys were a clear foot taller than me. And they didn't have the dismemberment mesh that the regular soldiers and enemies did. So I was concerned that those guys had kind of been dropped in, given lip sync capability, and then just kind of thrown into the game as a fuck it, those will fit the gap, rather than anything really fleshed out. Maybe that wasn't it. Maybe they weren't designed to be in combat, so they didn't need to be given the mesh, but they just felt out of place. And other things as well, like the Zeppelin was there and then it was gone, and I can only imagine that they possibly plan to have that feature a bit more, or maybe have a flying section, and just didn't have the time for it and just threw me down into the next bit quickly. And then we get to right at the very end, we get to the fucking underwater base. So I'm thinking, oh my god, this is going to be amazing. There's going to be shark people and squid people and crab people. Sorry. And no, just turns out you walk down a corridor, get the cutscene, end of the game. Oh, fine. Fuck you too, game. That was a little bit ham-fisted, really, but I can't know for sure. I would have liked it if the game had just been able to deliver like an extra hour and a half, or 2 hours maybe, of just exploring those last few areas, and it probably would have been able to get the story out a little bit better as well. I'll talk about the story near the end as well. I won't go straight into it because I want to talk about graphics. And obviously, I can't harp on about it not looking good because I don't really play games to blow myself away. I don't have a PC that's set up for Crisis. Let's put it like that. I like playing games where the gameplay is good and the story is good. If the graphics are good, that's a bonus, but I'm not going to lose sleep over it. I'm playing Lisa at the moment, and that's as low res as it can possibly get. And I'm actually about to start playing some other games which are really low res as well. But it's the game and the story and the feeling which appeals to me. And so while it doesn't look good mechanically, it didn't really affect me too much. The only thing I really had a trouble with was the not the LOD, the draw distance, because especially when you're in the outdoor areas, the distant brown or grey or white fog was a massive hindrance, especially late game when you're fighting enemies that can shoot back. You're just shooting at muzzle signatures like way off in the distance, which would work all right in like Operation Flashpoint or something where you can rely on, you just put a burst in that direction, they're probably dead. With this, you've got to be making those precision shots, and if you can't see the enemy, you can't make the shots. So it became a bit frustrating, and obviously later on I just went, oh fuck it, I'll bum rush them, and that was a viable tactic, but it just felt like it was working against what the game was intending me to do. I was supposed to be hiding behind a bit of cover and going from a distance, but I was like, no, fuck it, absorb 50 bullets to the chest and then get my health back by blowing its face off. That I do love that as well, that you did get health back for killing enemies. It really was a game that rewarded that full-on ballsy just charge at the enemy and kill them mentality. So apart from the draw distance, I generally felt that the game didn't look terrible. Again, I think it was the game using the assets it had well and being able to actually... In fact, this is something I quite liked, was it did a fair amount of storytelling through the world rather than just through the characters, because when it tried to tell the story through the characters, it didn't make a lick of motherfucking sense. And I am not saying that in any kind of degree of hyperbole. I'm still sitting here thinking, but why didn't you just... But what... I don't fucking know anymore. It was all just so very, 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 very retarded. But anyway, things like when you're going through the labs and you see the skeletons being augmented with the metal plating, that was really nice. And then when you get into the cryo areas and you come up against those skinless, half-finished soldiers, fuck me, that was creepy. And that was really good because it made me feel like I was moving through a functioning facility. That everything had a place. Although some parts, like the conveyor belt system, where it's just stamping big blocks of metal to go somewhere. There were bits of the game, obviously, where it was like, what kind of use does this possibly fucking have? Like that conveyor system thing was like, wait, there's no brake on this or no engine. Do you literally just push this down this massive concrete freeway, hoping it will jump gaps, and then you just open a trapdoor and dump it somewhere? That makes no sense as far as I'm concerned, but fuck it. What do I know? And yeah, apart from that, there was a lot of imagination in the designs of the creatures as well, and that was something I was really appreciative of, because they could have just been, oh, I don't know, let's just stick a skin on it, and then when you shoot it, the skin changes. No, when you shoot it, you actually see the implants on the bone beneath the skin. That was really nice. It felt like they'd put a lot of thought into that, so fantastic from that standpoint. Yeah, apart from graphics, I would say sound design is possibly the only thing I'd have a little bit of trouble with. Music would go up and down a little bit. That was pretty much fine. The actual music itself was fairly decent. It was boilerplate. It wasn't anything to write home about, but it did the job. My problem really was tying back to the guns, was that the guns didn't sound meaty most of all. Tesla rifle sounded good. Double-barreled shotgun sounded good. The plasma cannon sounded very good. There's that nice boom. That was fantastic. I really liked that. And the Gauss rifle as well. The nice. I'm sorry, I'm making all these weird, splattery, blubbery noises down the mic. So that was all really nice. But the rest of the guns, they just didn't quite have enough beef behind them. And I guess this is something which had to be tied in as well with the damage output that the guns had. But just giving them a bit more of a kick would have really made the difference. So that's pretty much everything from that regard. So moving on to story, and this is something where, I mean, I do bang on about story quite a lot in games, and I know some people are of the opinion that no, gameplay, then graphics, then story, somewhere over there that can fuck off, I don't really care. I'm kind of a guy where a bad story will break me out of a game, and I try to look for a game that doesn't break me out of that immersion. This is kind of why I have issues with stuff like Obscure, where some of the gameplay stuff made no sense in terms of the story, and some of the story suffered for that. In terms of this, I think the story was ambitious. It definitely took about an hour and a bit for it to really start hitting its stride in terms of pushing you towards a goal and actually giving you something interesting to go for. Because right off the bat, I was like, "Oh, is she a love interest? Oh no, she's dead. All right, were we foreshadowing something? No. Oh, all right, we'll just play the game then." And that just felt really bizarre that they put that up there, and I was like, "Oh, blimey, we're gonna have to rescue her or something." No, dead in the first 30 seconds. It was like, no, all right, fine. And so you had like. It felt like it was trying to have a moral grey area in terms of what it was doing. But this is the problem, and this is, I think, how I could sum up the whole story, is everyone was massively fucking incompetent. Dogstone just did not know how to organise things. He did not know that he had all these super soldiers and seemed to be perfectly content just keeping them on an island and routinely abusing them by blowing up their temples, rather than forming up and using them for whatever they were supposed to be used for, or something. And then you had the Doctor, who I can only remember as Mouldy Marlon Brando, who had the capacity to be an interesting character. He wanted to play God. He wanted to create a new society. That's all fine. I would like to learn more about a character like that, but then he just disappears behind the scenes for 90% of the game, and by the time you actually meet him face to face, it's over, and Kurt has absolutely no reaction to it. He's like, oh, I will talk about the ending right at the very end of the review as well. And then you had Lion, and this is possibly an expectation I had for the game that really pissed me off that it didn't get met, was I thought at some point we were going to join up with the super soldiers. We were going to join up, if not with the overbrutes, we'd join up with Lion's guys, so we'd team up with the goat guys, and we'd team up with the hyenas and the cheetahs. I really like the cheetahs as well, with the gauntlets that could run up really fast and slash you. That was fantastic. I thought we'd team up with those guys, but no, apparently within one fucking line of dialogue, Lion goes, but you're a soldier, and soldiers always fight soldiers. It's like, did Hideo Kojima come in and write that bit for you? Because that was stupid as fuck. sorry, I do have an issue with the Metal Gear Solid series in terms of storytelling. It's all just, it's over there and it's doing something. I just want to snap someone's neck if that's alright with you guys. No, not another cutscene, no! So, the game just felt like sometimes it bailed out of certain things. I would have loved it if I'd been able to do the team up. If that wasn't to be, fine, but I would have just liked possibly to actually feel like it was part of the story rather than just wandering around going, how do I leave? Is there a boat off this place? No? Oh, people are trying to kill me again. Alright, I'll deal with those guys. It felt like Kurt was just kind of dealing with one problem after another without necessarily actually achieving anything or actually accomplishing anything of value. So that was a bit of a pain in the arse. And that was kind of annoying because the idea of, well, there's obviously lots of games that do the whole idea of super soldiers and I want to make a better world with a new race and stuff, but this did little touchstones onto creating a society and what your responsibility is as a creator. Like the whole thing of, have I become their god? Are they making their own society? Do we really want to use them if they are now becoming sapient creatures? That was a real interesting plot point that got completely left bloody and beaten by the wayside. So yeah, I think it's not necessarily that the story itself was bad, it's that the missed opportunities were the things that pissed me off. In terms of the way the dialogue was written, that was pretty much fine. And the voice acting, again, was pretty much fine. I can only imagine, and this is a little personal thing I have, whenever I hear an English voice actor voicing a villain in an American game, I'm imagining some old Footlights era actor with wearing like a peaked cap going, oh yes, darling, I'm just on the way back from the globe where I was doing the Scottish play, and now I'm just doing a little something to fill in the time. In reality, it's like, I just need a job. But I just found that was personal amusement. But yeah, in terms of the story, as I said earlier, it did feel like the game was rushing to a conclusion near the end of it, and when we get down to the end, turns out the love interest is alive. Hooray! Didn't fucking know why that was going to be important. Turned out Kurt was actually his attempt as a human super soldier, but he didn't exhibit the things he was looking for. So he thought, if he bangs someone, then he'll get them pregnant, and then I'll get a super soldier. Because they're a dormant gene, but they're still dominant, so they'll show up in the children? This is something I think the game kind of missed elementary biology. It's like, how do you make a new perfect society if they have to be manufactured in a lab? I'm sorry, is that not a thing you thought of? Like for one, they would have to only breed within their own species because they still have separate genus. You can't crossbreed a fucking wolf with a fucking cheetah. You end up with a rather distressed looking cheetah or wolf, depending on which one's the female. You can't breed like that, and you can't form generational evolution and actually bloodlines and stuff like that if you're actually having to manufacture them and graft all the stuff onto them. So yeah, that was the thing that really confused me. I would have, again, going back to like stuff I would like to have seen in the game, I would have loved it if we'd found that they were actually capable of breeding, raising children, having a hierarchical structure, having like maternal and paternal areas. I mean, this is like, now I'm into dream areas of game, like discovering a society like this. That would have been really fucking cool. It didn't happen, and the fact that it didn't really address that problem just made the problem more prominent for me. But that's me just nitpicking. And yeah, the ending, it felt like possibly we could have got a little bit further in terms of explaining more of the plan and more of Kurt's origins, because all we really got was he washed up there on a plank of wood and then stuff happened and then he became a soldier and then I don't fucking know really. It all got really bizarre. I mean, I don't even know why Mulder Marlin Brando was green. That was never fucking explained, or was the fucking texture just poorly optimized? It was just, some parts of it just never made sense and were never explained, and I just sat there going, I don't fucking know. So, anyway, I've been going on for, fuck me, almost half an hour. Oh shit, I'll sum this up nice and quickly. I did enjoy the game. Parts of it annoyed me, parts of it really annoyed me, but that's more from a personal perspective of someone who does bitch about gameplay and bitch about story and think about the ways it could have been better. I'm a kind of a hypothetical gamer. I'm sitting there going, well, that could have been like this, and it would have been 10 times as good, but that's my personal opinion. It's a game I would recommend to people if you do like your first-person shooters. You want something that you could just pick up, drop out of. It won't task you massively. It's not going to be any kind of grand strategy or high levels of customization or AI or anything like that. But for a cheap / free, depending on how you get your hands on it, game, it's entertaining, and it's got a decent amount of imagination. It's got a decent amount of heart, and like, I know heart is not exactly a quantifiable resource, but just the effort that the devs put into making a game that was varied and had lovely little extra elements of detail, I thought really made a difference and really made it stand out to me. So, yes, that's a recommendation, and that is the end of my little diatribe. Thank you very much for listening and putting up with me. And I will be back with something else. Possibly robots. Possibly rabbits. Yeah, I've got a weird catalogue to look through. Anyway, catch you later. Bye!